Hello again, this is Kevin Benedict, veteran e-invoicing industry participant and SAP mentor alumnus, and I have the opportunity to be here with Scott Lewin, who's the CEO of Invoiceware International. Thanks for joining me today, Scott.
Good to see you again, Kevin.
And this is part 2 in a series that we've done on the various requirements of e-invoicing, so we can share with the viewers what you're seeing from your perspective in the market. Now, in episode 1 of this series, we talked about a lot of different components, what you've seen over the last 5 years of e-invoicing, and we touched on some of the different models companies are using to be compliant with these requirements. You mentioned software as a service, so the SaaS model as being a very important one. Can you tell us a little bit now? My understanding is that Invoiceware International follows that SaaS model as well, right?
Correct.
So can you just share with us what the SaaS model is and why you think that's useful for small, medium, and large companies?
Sure. The SaaS model is ideally suited for this type of application. Electronic invoicing, especially in Latin America, is extremely complex and it changes quite often. So in order for a company to support that internally, it takes a huge amount of resources. Instead, they can look to a SaaS provider like Invoiceware International to manage all of those complex processes, to manage all of the different connections and integrations to various government agencies, and really shield their internal systems from all of these changing requirements.
So if I could, let's talk to me about what you mean when you say when companies don't have all the resources to apply toward being compliant with these requirements. What kinds of resources would it take, and does it take, to be compliant with many of these requirements?
Sure. If you're going to do this internally, number one, you have to know about these changes and know about these requirements, which means you need local people, perhaps in Mexico, who speak Spanish, in Brazil, who speak Portuguese, in other countries, who are keeping track of the tax regulations and the changes. That's number one. If you don't know about the regulations, how can you support those? Number two, you need integration experts who are going to keep the integration between yourself and the government web services accurate and up to date. They do change as the regulations change. Number three, you're going to have to constantly be updating your ERP system, whether it is with customizations or in the SAP world with OSS notes, and that becomes a full-time department just doing compliance just within Latin America.
So you have to have functional guys that know your ERP and your back-end system. You have to have integration developers that continually integrate with these external web services and government agencies. And it sounds like you almost need tax and legal guys involved.
Absolutely. And to go one step further, every time there's a change and your software provider provides that in an update, that's a project. That's another project where you have to either have your own staff or consultants come in and update your internal system. So we're seeing more and more companies move to the SaaS model, and that allows them to focus on their own business and also shield, if they have a global template of their ERP, shield that global template from all of these changes that are required. The changes happen on our side, on the SaaS side of the electronic invoice provider.
Okay, I'm thinking through this because I've spent some time in the IT organization myself. Now, you can't do a SaaS model can't prevent a company from having to do some work, right? What work do they have to still do?
It's really minimal. We shield the ERP from all of these requirements, and within our solution, we handle much of the changes that are needed. Sure, if the government requires another field of information, they have to provide it to us. But but all of the changes back to the government and coming back into their ERP are handled in our platform. So what we do is provide actually an extension to their SAP solution, which allows them to do all of this electronic invoicing inside of SAP without having to implement many OSS nodes. For example, we worked with one very large consumer packaged goods company, and they eliminated over 200 OSS nodes by using us in Brazil. And so for them, it was a massive win because we got them up and live in 6 weeks, and they eliminated months of work that they would have to do if they were going to support it internally.
So you've talked about the changes that happen regularly within various countries. So number one, how many countries actually have electronic invoicing mandates, or maybe not mandates, but requirements?
Well, I mean, every country has processes, whether they're mandated or not. That's really the big issue. Brazil, as the leader, has the most complex requirements. Mexico is following closely. Argentina is also moving along that route. Guatemala is in the process of implementing new requirements that are mandated. Chile, Colombia, there just gets more and more, and so companies are looking to a SaaS provider not only to just help me in Mexico or help me in Brazil. The value proposition of finding an enterprise type partner is that we come in and we can help them in all of these countries, so they don't need to go out and find a local provider here, a local provider there, contract here, contract there, manage these different providers. They can work with us across all of these countries. Secondly, language is a big issue, and when you're working with local providers, sometimes it's a real challenge to understand, number one, what the requirements are, and number two, what are they really doing? If you don't have very strong skills in Portuguese, perhaps in your headquarters, or Spanish, it's very difficult sometimes to get the right information. We provide support in English, in Portuguese, in Spanish, so we can work with your local people on the ground in these countries. They can communicate when they have an issue or a question in their local language, but your headquarters can also get a full view as to what's happening, what's required, what will happen in English. And so that you can't discount the value there, because we hear time and time again, we just had trouble working with this partner or that partner. And the partner may be a great partner, but they just don't have enough English capability to work with the headquarters in the U.S. or in Europe. And that's key.
Great. Scott, I want to thank you so much for sharing with our audience and viewers today.
Good to talk to you, Kevin.